I want to take a moment of personal privilege to honor a man who lived his life in service to this state.
Governor Katie Hobbs began her State of the State last month recognizing the passing of local civil rights leader and community icon Mel Hannah, who was 84. He dedicated his life to public service, paving the way for many people of color to become leaders of today and tomorrow. All month, we're profiling stories of culture and community celebrating Black History Month.
I talked with family, friends, and mentees of Mel Hannah who hope to carry on the spirit of his legacy.
This was right after we had established African American Commission. Look who's right there in the middle, Mr. Mel Hannah.
Leah Landrum Taylor can't help smiling talking about her dear friend and confidant.
Even in situations that everyone could be completely unearthed, unshaken, unnerved about, he had a way of saying, let's really think this through. And let's look at all sides.
Reflecting on her 16 years in the state legislature, her mentor, Mel Hannah, by her side for all her firsts. You're the first African-American woman to run the Senate Minority Caucus, and then in your last year in the legislature, the only African-American lawmaker. This wasn't in the 1900s, this was 2015.
Right. Even now, I think that there's still just one African American in the legislature.
She says Mel Hannah taught her to always keep pushing and to never stop engaging people you disagree with.
You might be the only one sitting there, but you're not the only voice that can be heard.
Born in Winslow, Arizona, Mel Hannah stayed true to his roots, always fighting for rural representation. The first African-American on the Flagstaff City Council and Coconino County Board of Supervisors, he moved to Phoenix Director of Community Outreach with the Urban League, helping inmates transition to meaningful jobs, and was one of the first to lead the Arizona Commission on African-American Affairs.
He fought for civil rights, voting rights, human rights, diversity and inclusion.
Joe Delgado worked with Mel, a force of nature in wisdom and willpower.
Walking the streets, registering voters. We traveled the state. He introduced me to everybody.
In 1966, when the burning and everything was going on, I watched Mel take a gym full of people, and he said, well, have you thought about this way?
Homer Townsend remembers Mel being a voice of peace at the peak of the civil rights movement.
Mel was phenomenal.
He could bring everybody together.
Cousin Jerry Easley and niece Anna Battle humbled by his legacy.
Uncle Mel had a pure heart, and that he could reach out and work with different people, different eras of life and periods of time, and find a way to weave through, in the midst of mess, love, laughter, joking, encouragement, growth.
A peace broker and a jokester.
Everybody had a nickname. He was Foots,
Yes.
and I was Ruth the Gal, and my mother was Stinky Dinky.
Known for his signature silver hair, tan jacket, and old-school flip phone with an infinite Rolodex of key players from here to D.C.
It was the busiest flip phone, I think, in all of Arizona.
That charming, endearing spirit, contagiously inspiring.
He truly believed in giving his time, his life to helping others and helping make this state and our country a better place.
In that spirit and in his honor, those whose lives were touched by Mel Hannah taking a collective vow to continue his legacy.
And if we could carry on with that, wow, what a place we would have.
Our team